Welcome back to my video where I pretty much analyze my favorite anime, Erased. This is part 2. I decided to make a video analysis where I just describe how much of a masterpiece this anime really is, how much this anime really means to me. If you haven't done so already, please do watch the part 1 edition of this analysis. I discuss all the hidden meanings, themes, and connotations, explain the ending especially. Please do sit back, relax as I continue to explain and discuss the many reasons as to why this anime should be greatly appreciated after so many years since its release, and why I think it is pure genius. And hopefully by the end of this video, you will also agree with me as well. This video contains heavy spoilers for the anime. You have been warned. Okay, let's continue with the video. Last time we talked about and we concluded with how the use of color is so significant in this anime, and so I want to continue that with just a brief synopsis with the contrast between the colors red and blue. They're very different. They have a complete opposite meaning in this anime, similar to how the characters Yashiro and Satoru contrast one another. They are really different sides of a coin, but they are both plotters and planners. Although you may think that the two are very different, they are quite similar in somehow, some way. Light is mostly to do with Satoru, and shadow is mostly affiliated with Yashiro, but they're both very sharp and clever, and they need the other person to be that as well. It almost seems as if separating the influence of the two using different color. For example, Yashiro's red eyes. Anything red is caught within the web, within his web. I will explain that very soon when I link this with the opening animation, but Satoru's blue eyes and his shirt, that color links with him. For example, the opening animation helps to emphasize the color difference with the shadow on the characters that are also caught in Yashiro's web. I will explain all of this later on in this video, fear not. But let's go straight in with the first theme and hidden meaning that I wanted to explore in this anime, and that is the idea of digging deep to find yourself. The main intention at the start of this series for Satoru as a manga writer is to dig deep and find himself. He begins the story as a broken character. Although he doesn't understand why, as a manga artist, he is talented enough, but he is unable to make an emotional connection with his work and the readers. But it's not surprising given how he lacks the connections in his own life. He seems to be an isolated character with no friends until Yuki taught him how to fake it and make friends. He explains the secrets of being popular, and he was a massive influence in Satoru's childhood to just be himself and to have courage. Basically, Erased is a story of Satoru gaining a real emotional connection with both his past and his present. With this theme, the story perfectly connects his future and his past. Obviously, you know the phrase, the deeper you dig, the more you get out and you find yourself. This is where the story begins. As we see from the anime, if you haven't done so already, I don't know why you're watching this video, but this is exactly what our main character does. This is exactly what the hero does. There is no metaphorical way to put this in. In this anime, it's exactly what Satoru does throughout while having the mind of a 29-year-old. He digs deep down and finds himself. That is the main intention. He digs deep by going back into the past, hence the widescreen view to show his mind and his growth. On his first leap to the past, he makes connections with Kaio, but he elects to leave his other classmates out of it, and therefore he fails to save her. But it's that failure and the return to the present that he makes his connection with Irie, and he takes up her philosophy and her story of wanting to believe in people. His heartbreaking, repeated failures, they serve a purpose, both narratively and thematically. But step by step, that turns him into a type of person capable to save everyone and his current present adult version. From his experiences with Irie, he begins willing to let classmates such as Kenya to help him. and push and encourage him a little more in finding himself and digging down even deeper. He lets Kenya in on what he wants to accomplish, and then he has a real chance at not only saving Kaio, but his mother too. So it's the idea of digging down deep, but also believing in people, and in that way there is a chance to succeed. We acknowledge these glimpses of a potential superhero giving Satoru advice in life. It is as if the torch has been passed on to Satoru, as he is a superhero himself, just like he told Kenya. And solving the mystery of who the serial killer is, his main priority is to keep everyone safe, just like what every superhero should do. But another thing, Yuki, he is also a huge inspiration for Satoru to be himself. He develops the ability to speak his mind throughout the anime. He explains the secrets of becoming popular, the phrase, "I said that out loud." It's not just the idea of having an adult's mind trapped in a child's body, but it's the fact of being himself, but also the fact that Yuki taught him that to be himself, for example, in a science museum, talking about making friends with a bear, hiding behind exhibits, fooling around. He does that, and he's a kid, and that's what kids do, and that's very understandable, and you see that, and it's very amusing, and it's good because Satoru has the courage. Moving on, one of my favorite aspects of this anime is the title of this series, but more importantly the Japanese title and how it reflects the story, the town where I alone am not there. We learn that Kaio wrote an essay with a similar name, and one could argue that if a person has seen this anime halfway through, they would immediately link Kaio's essay to the title of this anime, but it's not necessarily about Kaio. But moving on to her essay of what she wrote, what she says, it's a cry for help from an abused child. It's speaking of Kaio's perfect world, one where she is alone, she's far away from town, she's free and unable to be hurt by anyone. But the original timeline of the anime is this world. After Kaio is killed, the town moves along without her, and there is no way that she can be hurt ever again, but yet, it is a timeline where lives are ruined. So there is that connection where the Japanese title, the title of this anime links to the original timeline of where she is dead. But alternatively, there is also another way where this is linked. Satoru's emotional growth is stunted and a killer is left to run free. Basically, that is obviously the original timeline. But the entire anime is not really about that. The entire anime title is the story of Satoru's upbringing about the opposite timeline, the town where he alone is not there. By preventing her death and all the others, he pays the price by being left in coma. This sacrifice is the reason why Kaio and the friends are left to grow up and live happily without any serial killers hanging over their childhood. While Kaio's loss destroyed lives, Satoru's saved many more, which is much more worth it, and as you see by the end of his anime, that is the name of his manga. Therefore, he digs deep and he finds himself. The coma was worth it. And you see that because whenever we have the first encounter between Kaio and Satoru after 15 years of being in a coma, Kaio obviously feels very guilty of having a family without Satoru being there, but Satoru says that whatever happened to him. That was meant to happen to him for her to be alive. As a mystery, Erased is rather well built. There are real stakes and there is a danger to go along with it. And that is mainly due to the villain and how brilliant this character is. I'm talking, of course, about Yashiro, and how he really does bring this anime even more to being a masterpiece. Although Satoru has the knowledge of the future and how the serial killer will progress in his murders, it is vital that the villain is so cunning that he seems unbeatable in order to keep the stakes high and the story very engaging. This anime's villain certainly is cunning, or he's always one step ahead even as Satoru changes the past once again. So let's talk about Yashiro's motivations as a villain. It's not just his planning and his quick thinking that makes the villain so excellent, it's his mindset and his motivations. He's not your stereotypical villain. While he does get off on committing perfect murder, killing with impunity and making someone else take the fall to hide even the existence of a serial killer, that's not his true goal. What he wants to be is perfect in planning and execution and still be foiled. The less the thrill he seeks, the more of the thrill of being bested. He doesn't plan to be caught at all, but he can't help but love and respect Satoru in his own way. He believes he is being fair, acknowledging the tenacity Satoru has shown. When he tries to drown Satoru, he leaves the town to keep himself safe, but to also reward Satoru for stopping him again. In the end, that is his ultimate downfall. When Satoru survives the drowning, the killer finds it unfair to kill him who has bested him. He finds that unfair, and so in his own way, he saves him. And so, with this character development, I want to talk about episode 11. But more closely, I want to talk about one major theme, which is the spider's thread story. Episode 11 obviously begins with the narration by Yashiro, who we now know is the ultimate killer. He informs the audience that he has enjoyed partaking and asserting power over other people since he was in 6th grade. And this is where it just gets very disturbing. And so I want to talk about not just what he mentions in the anime, but I also want to talk about his character in the anime as well as the manga, the stuff that we haven't really learnt about in the anime and that stuff that's really never really mentioned. So let's talk about it all and let's wrap it all up. As a child, he was obsessed by things like psychology and people's reactions to specific situations. But as he grew older, he became bored with the everyday life. There was nothing interesting happening in his life. He mentions one day that he was approached by a classmate who accidentally came into the possession of a box of baby hamsters. Yashiro took this box full of hamsters off their hands and went home that day, and he dumped the hamsters into a jar full of cold water. Now that's just lovely. That's exactly what a person would do. That's a very nice thing to do. You know, when I come back from my school, that's exactly what I'm going to do as well. Anyway, moving on. Several hours later, after he did this, he came back to realize that one of them had actually survived, and he decided to keep that hamster as a daily reminder of the incident and the thrill that he experienced in that moment. He named it Spice. Spice, perhaps to spice up his day. No, sorry. No, that was awful. Bad joke. No, really bad pun. Yeah, oh god. But I want to link this ultimately with the anime, and I want to talk about Yashiro's family, but most importantly, Yashiro's brother. Since that day, he had a tendency, a requirement for noticing individuals who have struggled to stay afloat. Well, one of his favorite books was called The Spider's Thread, a tale of a man named Kadata who, after falling into hell, who was given the chance to climb out of the spider's thread on his way up. Kadata kicked down any other sinners who tried to climb up with him. It was his and only his chance to escape. The thread then snapped, plunging Kadata back down to hell for eternity. This story provides an interesting imagery and not only portrays him as someone trying to gain power over the weak, but as an individual who is fascinated by those lost in their own desperation, like Kaio with her abuse and Satoru with his need to save people as well as himself. His abusive older brother convinced him to lure a young girl, kidnap a young girl to a shed where he stood guard as his older brother raped the girl. But he used kind words to manipulate the girl into being silent about the incident. But I want to take you back to one of the episodes in this anime where there is a scene in which Yashiro, who we still think is a good guy at this point, he is a teacher, he is good, he is seen as a father figure to Satoru. He gives Satoru and his mum a ride home in his car. During the scene, Satoru asks Yashiro how to befriend a girl that he doesn't really know very well. And so his advice to Satoru is to get this girl to let down her guard, charm her, and to use his strengths as a weapon. And watching the scene again after the big reveal is just horrifying, as you realize that it also alludes to his true nature, as he would definitely have implemented these tactics in his crimes. Now I want to take you back to the story of him and his brother keeping a girl in a shed. It makes much more sense. He made it a monthly thing where the brother would get to rape young girls monthly while Yashiro would stay in guard. And the only reason he is in guard is to get the thrill that he wanted out of his life to manipulate girls, which appealed to his intrigue in psychology. During one of the monthly visits, due to his own negligence, the boy's mother came close to the shed where the rape was happening, and the brother, attempting to keep the girl from screaming, he accidentally strangled her to death. He murders this girl, and Yashiro and the brother obviously try to revive her, so they hid the body. Yashiro and the brother, although they tried to revive the girl, she was dead. And so they only had one choice, and that was to hide the body. However, Yashiro realized that his brother was planning to frame him for the murder, and so he took it in his own hands, and he realized that he could see a spider's thread attached to his older brother's head, resembling the same thread from his favorite book. At some point, Spice died, and while he felt a sense of loss, Yashiro felt this loss. It wasn't out of care for his pets, because now he had nothing to entertain himself for his day-to-day life, so he refused to be framed, and he planned out to murder his own brother to make it look like the boy killed himself out of guilt for raping and murdering the girl before. And so Yashiro found the new thrill in life, getting away with murder and manipulating innocent people. Every day he found a victim. He would visualize a spider's thread attached to their head, and when he murdered them, it was as if there was just a cutting the thread, as you see throughout this anime, and mostly towards the end. All of this relates to the events in the anime where Yashiro became the elementary school teacher. And that is when he began trying to kidnap neighborhood children to isolated areas to murder them. Ultimately, there is the ending. And I want to talk to you about this ending, why it's so significant, and why all of this leads to Yashiro's character development, especially the spider's thread. Building up to this, there are a lot of links and emphasis for the spider's thread story, like I just mentioned, but it's also mentioned in the anime. But let's explore that throughout the anime, starting off with the opening sequence first. It contains a still image of our hero of the anime, Satoru, along with the three most important women in his life, the mother, Airi, and Kayo. There is a blue color background with Satoru, but then it suddenly changes to red, along with Satoru, who changes into Yashiro. It implies that he is still on the loose, still trying to find the thrill in kidnapping and murdering all three friends and family members that Satoru cares so much about, to bring that excitement back in his life that he so desperately needs. There's also a shadow on all three of these characters as soon as Yashiro appears, which also suggests the spider's thread happening at the same time in a very metaphorical way, as all three are caught on the webbing. It implies that Yashiro ultimately would do all he can to cut and get rid of this webbing. So, let's begin, and let's finally talk about the last episode. The final confrontation, the roof scene, of course. This is an iconic scene. So Satoru claims that he has beaten Yashiro, which has struck a chord in the villain. But it's exactly what he wants. He wants the competition. He needs to be cunning, and for Satoru to be that as well. He seems to be more of a thrill to be bested and beaten than trying to overcome all that. that is his motivation. He's not a typical villain. He likes the extra psychological mind game in his head. He would do anything to win in his own way that he prefers so much. Satoru has nothing to fear. He claims to have bested him by saving the children, his mother, but then Yashiro questions why he would kill the mother, which leads to Satoru replying with telling him what he wants to know. We see a glimpse of a shot of the spiderweb at this very moment, which teases that this subject, this book, is the key to Yashiro's success. There is a side shot of Satoru looking down upon, but with the spider's web at the top of his head. It's just dangling there. And so there is an ultimate link with all of this, which I will get to very, very soon. It's so small and thick, with just one cut would solve Yashiro's problems. Satoru says that he screwed all of his plans because he knew his future. He read his mind like a book. It's the same book that Yashiro read when he was young, which obviously has the main connection in this episode. Satoru claims that Yashiro could have killed him any time for the past 15 years while in coma, but he didn't because Yashiro needed him. He was his reason to live, his hope. A glimpse, at this moment, a glimpse of Spice in the same shot in episode 11 appears when Yashiro was explaining the spider's thread. It links to the character and how he wanted to experience the thrill, and he claims to be fair. He kept his word. Every time he tried to kill him, he was unable to, and he waited 15 years to wake up to gain that satisfaction and kill him right away. This was Yashiro's main attraction. Satoru claims that he was the one that filled the void in Yashiro, and ultimately when he says this, there is a spinning wheel shot, but without the hamster. And as soon as I saw this, I think this suggests that Spice has passed on through time, but it also symbolizes the 15 years that Yashiro has factually not gained the true feeling. He is nothing but an empty void. He is just not accepting defeat, although he has been defeated, but he just doesn't know that. Satoru then attempts to get away and jump off the roof, only to be stopped by Yashiro. He tests him, and Yashiro needed him to be alive, because he is the one who has consistently denied him the pleasure of holding power over others. He is the one thing, he is the one person that fascinates Yashiro the most. But then just when he thinks he has overtaken Satoru, he is confounded by the last words, "I know your future." This is obviously during when he attempts to drown Satoru, but then he hears the words, "I know your future." Yashiro has had 15 years to think about these words and how it seemed like Satoru always knew what target Yashiro would go for. He has been in a coma for 15 years, and therefore that entire time for Satoru has gone just like that, in a flash. However, in Yashiro's point of view, he really did have to wait all that time, and for him, it seems like forever. And as we see throughout the years, that's exactly how Yashiro feels. He feels just desperate to just have that void inside him. Satoru makes Yashiro feel alive. He is the real reason why he is alive to this day. This entire speech of Satoru's, it's filled with gorgeous and bright lighting. It symbolizes his power and dominance over Yashiro, and especially with the sun shining on Satoru, he has overcome the defeat, and now it is Yashiro who must face the light. But the thing is, he can't stand this light. He hates the light. He admits that he cannot live. It's not implied in a positive way. Yashiro despises the idea of light. It is the red eyes that still represent danger inside this character. It leads to his actions by throwing him off the roof and to supposedly kill Satoru, or so he thinks. He attempts to jump off the roof himself, but he stops himself only to find out that Satoru and his allies have ultimately set him up. Yashiro ignores this and he laughs it off, but he still thinks that he has a chance to get away. The imagery sets the scene in this glimpse of a shot. Earlier, Yashiro sees Satoru with a spider thread attached to his head when Satoru began talking about his plan. But now, Yashiro takes a step back and he lands in a puddle of water and he sees his own reflection in the water. He sees a spider web dangling at the top of his head. And it finally snaps. It is the moment of satisfaction from the audience. Satoru is able to turn Yashiro into one of the most desperate people, and Satoru has finally succeeded. It is a perfect confrontation conclusion, and that just about wraps it up. This anime is thematically deep with fantastic characters. It is the perfect melding of time travel and murder mystery, and it makes for a whole much greater than the sum of its parts. I will never forget how this anime made me feel. I would stay up quite late watching this anime. I just wouldn't live with myself if I didn't watch the next episode. I don't even think that I want there to be a season 2 because the ending was just simply perfect in my opinion. There is nothing that I would change. Some people had a problem as to why Satoru and Kaio didn't end up together, but then they justify this in a way that I was okay with it, and they addressed that in the final episode. It is everything that I wanted an anime to be. People look up to animes such as Cowboy Bebop, but this is the anime for me. This is the anime for me where I just fell in love with this genre. And don't get me wrong, I love Cowboy Bebop, but Erased is a masterpiece, and Erased definitely deserves an A+. Thank you so much for watching this video. I've really enjoyed talking about and really deeply talking about this anime. Let me know if you guys want some more. I would love to. Thank you for watching.